for police reforms in the country for many years. And these organizations include the human rights organizations. One of them is the Independent Medical Legal Unit. It has been pushing for, better treatment, especially by police officers and correctional officers as well, because it has also worked with the prison service and looking at the treatment of people in prison facilities across the country over many years. Peter Kiama is the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit, and he now joins us on the line. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Peter.
Morning, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Now, Peter, we are seeing, we cannot even say a re-emergence, we cannot even say a spike. We are seeing a continuation of police acting outside the law, with just this particular one case of the man who was shot dead in Mathare. And there are very many others. During this curfew period, the enforcement of the curfew, we see cases all the time of either police have shot dead somebody accidentally or either intentionally, or police have beaten up somebody to a point where they need to be taken to hospital. As an organization that deals with this, I mean, are you seeing anything different from what you see any other time?
No, we are not seeing, unfortunately, we are not seeing anything different. As you have just mentioned, this is a continuation of the same. It looks like, the police are on the same default mode, where force is the default mode of policing, which is a very unfortunate situation, when you consider the investment we have made in police reforms in this country for the last almost 10 years now. We are in the 9th year of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and when you look at what we can celebrate as achievements in police reforms, and if the barometer is the use of force or lack of it, then I think the police have failed the test. If you give me a minute just to expound on that particular point.
Yes, please.
We did a study covering 5 years, 2009 to 2013. We went to 7 mortuaries in the country, the 7 major mortuaries in the country, and we looked at cases of death from bullet homicide. And these records in the mortuaries are police records and pathologist records, so they are government records.
Yep.
And we covered 1,873 deaths from bullets.
Wow.
Now, what was shocking for us, at that particular point, the police narrative was that the police shoot people dead because they are killing people.
Yep.
And when we went into that data and we did the analysis with the experts in that field, we found that out of the 1873 cases, 67% were people who had died from police bullets. And only 13.9% had died from guns by criminals. Okay. I mean, criminals who are not police officers.
Yep.
And so since then, we've been tracking, killings by police from 2013 all the way for the last 7 years. And we have approximately 1,000 people dead from police bullets. Of course, some of them are from strangulation.
Yeah.
Others are from drowning and other means.
So this is specific to police bullets.
Police bullets, yes.
Shot dead by a police officer.
Shot dead. A good number of them executed for no reason at all.
Yeah.
When we look at that study of 2009 to 2013, you find that 92% of the people who died from bullets at that time died at the scene of shooting. So there was intentional killing in most of the cases, because you expect that if police are shooting to prevent a crime or to protect themselves, then most likely maybe not even 50% of the people would die, because it is preventive.
Yeah.
It's not an execution. But this particular study, 92% died at the shooting.
So it was
not in hospital.
Shoot to kill, basically.
No, exactly. That's the indication there from the expert, analysis. Now, since 2013, we have an average of 140 cases of people killed by the police. If I take you down that road, you find that 2013, 143, 2014, 199, 2015, 126, 2016, 144. So you can see the numbers.
Yeah.
The numbers scary. It's like a country at war with each other, like with the police.
And
or the police at war with the people.
The justification by police officers in all these cases, when they're recording that this person has died,
yeah,
what is it that is entered in the OB?
Now, when you look at the records, because I would like to go by data, if you look at the record going by that study we did in the mortuary, in 48% of the reports the police filed, they did not indicate the circumstances. And that's actually a lack of accountability on the side of the police service.
Yes.
They should be able to indicate in every case what were the circumstances of the killing that they did.
Yep.
Actually, from 2011, they're supposed to report to IPOA every case of an injury or a death, arising from an encounter with citizens.
Peter, do you think this happens? Let's look at it really critically now. Do you think that every death that occurs as a result of police officers expending their weapons is reported to IPOA, for example?
No. I can go on record to say that not every case is reported. If you look at the first 6 years of IPOA, if you look at the end term report of the IPOA board, the first 6 years, one of the highlights of that report by the board when they were handing over is the difficulty in getting reports from police in every incident of injury or death. And
the numbers are worrying. I mean, I think the chronology that you've given us in the last 2 minutes, when you've gone from year to year, we've seen an increase in the deaths of people at the hand of the police. Now, I find it difficult to justify any death, regardless of what it was. I know we have some times whereby we would say it would be an armed robbery or things like that, and then death occurs. But I think when we're looking at brutality, then we're looking at individuals then who may have been caught in a difficult circumstance, such as the COVID curfew times that we're looking at. And if we go back to IPOA is already reporting 15 deaths and 31 injuries at the hand of police just during COVID times as a result of the curfew measures that have been put in place. Now, it seems so difficult to be able to get the correct information. And if it is so hard to get the right information about what has happened, wouldn't it be even more difficult to get any kind of prosecutorial measures then put in place?
Yes, that is the case. And I would like to commend Kenyans, especially during this period of the COVID-19, because we have seen an increase in citizen journalism, which has really helped because of limitation in movements of oversight bodies, NGOs like ourselves. We are not able to move out of Nairobi. Citizens have really come forward and defended their rights through documentation and posting on social media. That has really helped. So I'd like to commend citizens for remaining vigilant, because as we say, the price of democracy is eternal vigilance, and they have done quite well. So I'd like to commend them on that. Now, the most difficult thing is that when the police violate the people, like for example, if they shoot somebody dead, they are the same ones who are in charge of the scene of crime. They are the ones who are in charge of taking away the body.
Exactly.
And therefore, so much evidence is lost. By the time the pathologist comes to do a post-mortem, which we usually support families to do, so much evidence is lost. Because the pathologist needs to see, the forensic expert needs to examine the scene of crime. We, lobbied for a new law to set up the National Coroner Service, and the president sent it to a new law called the National Coroner Service Act 2017. The government has not implemented that particular law in terms of setting up the National Coroner Service, which would have taken over independent forensic investigations in cases of suspicious death or reportable death under that law. So we end up losing a lot of information that would help institutions like IPOA or the ODPP in terms of gathering adequate evidence to be able to hold the police to account. So there are those kind of gaps that are there, but there's also the overall culture of protecting each other. Among the boys, well, we have girls in the National Police Service, but the culture, it's we protect each other. That's a pervading culture across the service, which is quite unfortunate because we have recognized in our interactions with the police, they are very dedicated police officers. They are reform-minded police officers, but they are intimidated by the culture of impunity. And that the fact that the institution allows that to continue, then the reform-minded ones are not able to go, the extra mile to ensure that we have a professional police service.
And Peter, now if we look back at Kenyans got to a point where they realized that the problem with police brutality was systemic. And with the enactment of a new constitution, when the constitution was being drafted, among the things that were very clear in that constitution was that we're going to have police reforms. We're going to reform the police police force into make it a police service. We're going to tear down the old system and put up a new system. And now we are saying that 10 years of implementing that constitution, even with all the activities that have gone into police reforms, we talk about the setting up of the Police Service Commission. The Police Service Commission, that team led by Kavuludi, went and reviewed all serving police officers and sort of audited them and their performance in office and retained those that were considered good apples, and the bad apples were removed. We also set up IPOA, a completely independent authority that has civilians in it that sort of looks at the operation of the police service. The police themselves have the internal affairs unit. And we're saying that with all these things, we still have not moved much. We are still seeing cases where the police service is operating as if it has absolutely no oversight. What's the problem?
Now, there are problems at several levels. Number one, you have put it rightly that we have been able to establish the legal infrastructure. We have those three laws that set up IPOA, set up a national police service, gave the Inspector General more independence of command, provided more budgetary support to the police, set up the independent policing oversight authority and internal affairs. We've done well so far in that regard. In September 2018, the President reorganized the command structure to streamline the command of the National Police Service and clearly, articulated his vision for reforms in the National Police Service with regard to professionalism and accountability and quality service, and also public participation in policing. That was clearly articulated in September in a document issued by the President in September 2018. Now, the unfortunate thing is that where we are failing now is the attitude change, the software of the police. We must work on the software. We have a new, 1 year old now, Inspector General, who, we sat with in his first 100 days, and he committed to protection of human rights in policing. He committed to hold the officers to account. Now, what you see is an open defiance across the country of the Inspector General's vision. What you see is an open defiance across the country by some police officers.
But at the same time, Peter, I would assume that when IG Mutiambai took office, you had this meeting with him. When Boynet took office as IG, I am assuming that you also had a meeting with him, and you also had the same kind of commitments and the same kind of vision of a police service that is more responsive to the needs of the public. However, it appears to me like the commitments that are made in boardrooms vis-a-vis the actual practice are completely different.
Now, remember that No, I think I would agree with you that, and that's what I'm using now the word defiance. I have not used that before. At the start of the COVID-19 measures that were put in place, the restriction of movement, the curfew, and other measures, the Inspector General articulated his position by issuing guidelines that were supposed to help the police to enforce the measures while respecting human rights. Now, we have seen that in over 15 counties so far, we have, documented 51 cases of police violations, including 18 deaths and 33 cases of torture and ill treatment that are completely contrary to the guidelines issued by the Inspector General. Okay?
And this is in what period, Peter?
Just during the curfew.
This is during the curfew, right?
During the curfew, yes. Between the 16th of March and 31st of May. So we haven't even included the ones that, the first 3 days of the month, this month, which we are still following up on. And these are cases where we've even done postmortems and looked at the injuries that were caused by the police, either through bullets or through other means, including assault on health workers who are legitimately out there, trying to support us to save our lives from COVID-19. So what we have seen is, across these cases, is a total defiance of the guidelines issued by the Inspector General. Now, why is that happening? My opinion on this is that this is happening because the system allows it to happen. The police are doing this. Those police officers who are violating the law are doing this because they know they can get away with it.
Yes.
A few will be caught, of course. A few will be caught, like we have seen now with the Yasin, the Kijana Yasin Moyo. May God rest his soul in peace. We'll see a few, not escape, but the majority of them are going to escape. Why? Because the system allows it. The system, I'll tell you, I have interacted with the police officers because they live among us. And what I hear them say about the curfew is, Wakenya wanaelewa fujo tu. Wakenya hawaelewi mundomo.
It's the only language.
That is the attitude. That the only language Kenyans understand is force, brutal force. Now, for me, that is a misnomer because we have seen Kenyans comply with other measures across the country without any force.
True.
But the fact that the police use force, they actually legitimize force and make themselves a legitimate target from citizens as well. Because we have seen, unfortunately, citizens attack the police, which we don't support. But by the police, meting out brutal force against citizens, they themselves make themselves a legitimate target for citizen violence.
You mentioned...
Which is not...
You mentioned something there, Peter. You talked about the system not willing to change. And I want to put it to you that even when the IG of police is coming up with the modus operandi on this is how we're going to operate during this curfew, and publicly telling us this, when he retreats to the office, he just throws it somewhere on the shelf because he also knows that it's not going to be followed. So I'm sitting here just having this thought that even the IG of police is not 100% committed to seeing reforms. So yes, he may have a bit of willingness to see some reforms, but he's not 100% committed. That's the reason why, for example, we don't see the IG of police demanding immediate action on the 18 deaths or 33 torture, or even coming out to publicly say, look, I want to come here again and speak publicly and tell all the officers across the country, this is what I said at the beginning, and this is what you are doing, and you're not following the law. And anyone who violates this, you're going to face the disciplinary measures. However, we don't see this. So that's why I'm putting it to you that I think even at the top level, beyond even the IG to the bosses above that, the system is not willing to change.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you. Remember that the current practice and attitudes within the service benefit, to a large extent, a good number of officers. Whether it is extortion, bribery, violence. We have seen officers who have been involved in violence, and the evidence is there, in killings, the evidence is there, and they are promoted.
Yeah.
We saw just before the vetting of the the National Police Service vetting exercise, which miserably failed. We saw specific officers being promoted just before to senior ranks to protect them. Those are police officers whose complaints had been raised against.
Yep.
And required to be investigated. We just saw the other day a particular officer who was an OCS in a particular station in Nairobi, in Kabete police station, who is alleged to have killed a suspect in custody. We raised the issue. The officer, was given accommodation in 2014. The other day, I caught up with him. He's now been charged with murder, in another jurisdiction within Machakos County.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cover-up within the service, which I think I would say the buck stops at the desk of the Inspector General. We have given the Inspector General the benefit of doubt, and in this case, you have not seen us go out condemning him or asking him to resign in the last 70 days. What we've done is, as IMLU, we have sent a petition to the Inspector General on these cases with the details of the suspect, of the victims, with the names of the police stations, with the OB numbers. 3 weeks since we sent the petition, he has not responded.
That should tell you something.
It's either he's ignored. And look, if you want to look at it plainly, just based on what you said, either it's being ignored because the culture and practice has been that nothing is going to be done, and that they can behave in the way in which they please, and knowing very well that nobody's going to ask questions and any kind of procedure is not going to be followed.
Yeah, I think for us as IMLU, we do feel that more can be done. More can be done. Especially not even to hold people to account, to ensure that nobody dies from a police encounter unnecessarily. Because the police have been given the power to use the gun.
Yeah.
But only in 2 instances, to protect their life or to protect the life of another person. The police went to Parliament and secured an amendment to the law to allow them to shoot to kill or to use lethal force to protect property.
Yeah.
But we have gone to court with other civil society organizations to contest that, because we do not feel that somebody should die, because
property
they were snatching a phone.
Yeah.
They were snatching a phone, unless they were using violence that would threaten the life of another person. But not to protect, the windscreen of a vehicle or the side mirror of a vehicle, as we have seen in instances in the CBD.
Or somebody's piece of land.
Precisely. I mean, there's no reason why we should be, we should prioritize other things above the right to life.
Yeah. Peter, let's take a break, take a look at traffic, and then we continue this conversation. And when we come out of the conversation, we'll also open up the phone lines, 0719-012-600, so that anybody who's got a question or comment to the Peter Qiyamah, he's Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit, you can shoot your questions and comments. We are discussing police brutality, the long and windy journey of police reforms that seems to be going round in circles before it even takes off. What do you think about that? Police reforms, police brutality, especially now during these COVID-19 times, you're seeing 18 people shot dead, 33 tortured. These according to data collected by the IMLU between the 16th of March and the 31st of May. These are huge, high numbers. Good morning, 27 minutes to 9. Criminals. The rest, police officers. 92% of those died at the scene of the shooting, which means that it was a shoot to kill. The intention of the person who was pulling the trigger was to end life. Just looking at the kind of statistics as well, since 2013, IMLU says that they have recorded an average of 140 cases of people killed by cops, on average, year on year. The numbers keep changing. But just in this COVID-19 period, since the 16th of March, when restrictions were put in place, 18 people have died. 18 people have been shot dead, have been killed. 33 people have been tortured. various forms of torture. This is, it basically just pours cold water. It vomits on the shoes of those who wrote the Constitution and said, this is what we're going to do. And one way of ensuring that we have a just society is to reform our institutions. Let's reform the police service. We have had very many structural adjustments to the police service. And as Peter Kiama, who is the executive director of IMLU, is saying, we forgot the software. Or maybe the software is just the people who should be working on the software are not willing to work on the software. Yeah. Is that so, Peter?
If I go back to the command structure, the command and control structure of the National Police Service, that was established in 2018, September 2018, and launched by the president. What that command structure was trying to do was to ensure that responsibility is clarified. Responsibility for the powers given and the responsibilities for the resources given.
Yes.
And therefore, instead of having three commanders around a police station, you have a DCI commander, you have a Kenya General Duty commander, you have an AP commander.
Yep.
We now have only one under the jurisdiction of every police station. That is the ward commander, who is formerly called the OCS.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you want to prevent killings and prevent violations, the person in charge is now very well known. There's no ambiguity anymore. And therefore, this is the person who assigns duties every morning and every evening. Okay? So, and they know which officer is assigned to which responsibility and which particular section of the jurisdiction every day and every hour. Now, what we are seeing is a failure of the command structure. And the command structure goes all the way to the office of the Inspector General. Of course, it stops first at the Deputy Inspector General, who reports to the Inspector General. But the operational command is the Deputy Inspector General. And therefore, what we are seeing, therefore, is a failure of the command structure. And that's where we need to place the responsibility. In that, for example, if it is take for example, Huruma Police Station, around which in Nairobi, around which, or even Kondele Police Station in Kisumu, for example, or whichever other station, if an officer is on patrol and they kill somebody on the patrol, the ward commander should take immediate action. Number one, to disarm the officer and to institute investigations, including reporting, giving all details of the incident to IPOA. For independent investigations, including going to see the family of the victim.
But Peter,
explaining the action they are taking.
Is this a failure of the structure, or is the structure working the way it's designed to work?
That's an interesting question to it. I'm saying it's a failure because I'm basing my argument around the Constitution and legal provisions and the expectations of Kenya. In that the National Police Service has been established to provide security and safety for the people. Okay? And so if you base it on that, therefore, the system has failed.
Right. So if we're saying, sorry, Peter, we're saying that if we're looking at a failure of the command structure at the seat of the deputy, which is what you've spoken about just now. So now that means a failure in oversight, failure in checks and balances, failure across board. So that means that there are certain things that are going to do. So let's say, because I mean, a lot of the things that you've spoken about now are ideal situations, that there's a constitution that the people are supposed to follow. There's a constitution that custodians of the law, such as the police, are supposed to follow and abide by, or at least make sure that the citizens are operating within those tenets, right? That is not happening. So are we saying that ideally, if this position of deputy at the police, the deputy at the police service is able to put all these checks and balances, then what we've described as systemic issues then will suddenly change?
Now, let me say that I partially agree with you that before the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and the enactment of the National Police Service Act 2011, those we would say were ideals. But finally now they've been captured in the normative framework, legal framework of the country. Through consensus, we went to a referendum, and Kenyans clearly said we want a national police service, not a national police force.
Yes.
So I don't think it's idealistic anymore. What has happened is the resistance of the institution to change, and other institutions that are supposed to ensure that the institution of the National Police Service changes have also failed, including the Independent Policing Oversight Authority in this respect. And I want to communicate this very clearly. In that I do feel that the IPOA should enhance their oversight over the commanders, at every level, so that command responsibility becomes now the focus, even as we pursue individual criminal
officer.
Responsibility. Yes, because we need to pursue those two. But for a long time, even in the first term of IPOA board, we saw them saying, well, let's not pursue too much of command responsibility. Let's pursue individual cases and explore how that goes. I think it's the high time we begin to hold the commanders to account, in that if police officers under a particular police station go out there and kill without any reason to kill, then even the OCS should step down.
Okay.
Yes, because there's a failure.
So that forces accountability at some level.
Exactly. So we shouldn't be going to the Inspector General when we know under whose jurisdiction the police killed. We should hold the commander to account.
I think there's a general... It occurs to me that there may be a general belief that when these cases happen within the boundaries of the police, that it's not a crime, right? Taking of a life, however you want to look at it, in this case is a crime. And if we look at the way in which other crimes are dealt with in this country, that when somebody then is taken, or when somebody or an individual or group is prosecuted, it then serves as a deterrent to others who may want to then do the same thing, or who may be caught within that snare. Do you think this would work in this case, whereby police randomly doing their patrols during curfew hours, for example, shoot somebody, or would be tempted to shoot somebody, realize what may have happened to their colleagues previously, would stop them from taking that action? Do you think this is going to work for something that, again, we've deemed a systemic issue?
No. Remember, there's also a link to politics, because the police, when we talk about policing services, they are in the realm of governance, good governance. Now, we do know that our political system has problems, and for a long time, the police institution. I'm having a difficulty calling it a service or a force, because I think there's a bit of ambiguity now going by the conduct we are seeing. The police institution has been used for a long time to control, suppress the population. Now, the new legal infrastructure was meant to change that, to provide the basis to change that. So the police, at the back of their mind, always know that they owe some loyalty to the political system, and that when push comes to shove, they can be protected. Now, especially within the executive. But we have parliament, which has also totally failed in holding the police to account. We have made many submissions to parliament, but we have not seen parliament do enough, including demanding, demanding that those who have command responsibility take responsibility. This what we are seeing is, with regard to your question now, for me to specifically speak to that, what we are seeing across the country is reform-minded officers at the middle ranks, who are well-educated, well-trained, their attitudes are for reform, they are reform-minded, but there's a bit of a difficulty in terms of they keep on asking themselves, how far should I go?
without burning my fingers. Yes.
Commanders at middle ranks look over their shoulder every time they want to, bring reform is causing a lot of difficulty within the National Police Service. So those doubts need to be removed, and I think the responsibility to remove those doubts in terms of how far can I go as a middle level officer, as an officer commanding a police station, or as an officer commanding a sub county, how far can I go? Those doubts can only be removed by the Inspector General.
I get a sense, though, Peter, that I think we are also blaming, like you've just said, there are officers in middle ranks who want to see the reform. There are officers in junior level who are operating with impunity. Officers at senior level may also be wanting to institute reforms, but they may be feeling that their hands are tied because the system itself, and the system is now going beyond the service into the national government system. The government system itself is not willing to see police reforms. The government would like to still continue having a police service or a police force that it can use to control the people, to subdue the people. Because, and the reason I'm saying that is, if indeed there was willingness and determination to reform the police service, and we've got all the legal instruments backing these reforms, I don't see the reason why we don't have those reforms. From the point of having an Inspector General of Police picked, to a point of even removing an Inspector General of Police because the government is feeling that this Inspector General of Police is not being effective, and bringing in a new Inspector General of Police, serving an entire term, having a third Inspector General of Police, but we're still talking the same story. You've said the president himself came up with a new structure in 2018 and said, this is the structure that we'd like to see the police service operating in. But I go back to saying the government system does not want to see police reforms.
Now, remember, of course, there are political interests to this, and the policy document that was issued by the president in September 2018, was meant to address that, and we saw serious commitment at that particular point. But I think the optimism stopped there when we look at how far the reforms have been implemented. Remember, in September 2018, the president issued an order to the Ministry of Interior and Treasury to implement Section 116, I think 116, of the National Police Service Act that provides the Inspector General with the independence of budget. The Inspector General is not in charge of the National Police Service budget. So there are those interests in there within the executive and within Parliament that want to control the police even through budget, just like they've done with the judiciary. And therefore, for us to provide the Inspector General with more leverage as well, we have to give, make the Inspector General the accounting officer for the National Police Service budget, just like we've done with the Director General of the Commissioner General of the Prison Service. The prison service is smaller than the National Police Service, yet the budget is managed a bit differently. So we do expect that those within the executive provide stop holding the National Police Service on a short leash with regard to the budget.
With budgeting issues.
Because it's a critical issue. If you look at the National Police budget, which we are now analyzing, and we will be interacting with the media maybe later in the year, if you look at the amount of money that goes to the police station, you empathize with some of the officers who manage police stations. So there's a resource issue as well with regard to the service, the quality of services provided at the police station.
So who's been having the control of the budget?
The National Police Service budget is managed from the Ministry of Interior.
There you go.
And that has been a very contentious issue. It is the elephant in the room. We need to address it. And I think even the media needs to interrogate that particular issue, because there's a clear provision within the National Police Service Act on how this should be managed.
So they don't have that independence, because if you don't have the independence to think, to determine how you're going to spend your money, you basically are not independent.
No, you are not. And also remember that Parliament failed us in 2014 and subsequent years when Parliament agreed with the executive to amend the National Police Service Act to remove some of the independence, some of the provisions that provided the Inspector General with more independence, including the recruitment of the Inspector General competitively. Now, the excuse at that point by the executive was that the president needs to have control over the Inspector General.
It's got to be the commander-in-chief.
Exactly. Now, remember, it is the armed forces, commander-in-chief of the armed forces.
Yes.
And the police are not armed forces. The police are civilians who have been armed to provide security and safety.
Yeah.
So there's an issue with regard to the budgeting. So Parliament has failed us. We had to go to court to mitigate some of the serious negative consequences of those amendments. And Parliament needs to revisit that clearly and maybe make more amendments to provide the independence required of the National Police Service. Remember that since 2011, we've had, I think, now 3 persons in charge of the National Police Service. There are 2 Inspector Generals. And in both instances, the first one who was removed was not removed because they did not, because they did so well for the people that they annoyed the executive.
Yeah.
They actually failed in their duties and had to go.
They had to.
So it's not that, any of them could say, I'm doing so well for the people that have annoyed the powers to be. Our dream is to see an Inspector General and other commanders at different levels who work so well for the people, who improve the security so much that they annoy the executive. We want to see that because that's the narrative that is out there. That, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that because I'm going to annoy the powers to be.
Yeah, you don't want to ruffle the feathers.
You don't want to ruffle feathers.
Ruffle feathers.
Yeah,
sure, but what's that going to take? I mean, look, Peter, it sounds nice that we can say it this, because wouldn't it be a fantastic thing that you would be able to see that the people of the country so well protected by a police service that it is essentially irritating somebody else? That would be great. What needs to happen for that to be? Because now, if you want to look at the situation, citizens are scared. Nobody wants to go near the police. If you just from these numbers that we're hearing, it's a disturbing thing, right? And unfortunately, it's not just in COVID times. It is beyond that. People's first reaction or people's first emotion towards the police is fear. So what needs to happen? What are the steps that we need to be able to tick off to get to that point whereby we're living in this place where the police are actually your friend?
We need to own the National Police Service as citizens. We need to grab it away from the powers that be. The powers that be in the political system, the executive, as well as within the National Police Service. Because there are those also who have subjected the National Police Service to capture because of old habits and old attitudes and old traditions. We need to retake our National Police Service.
Our attempts to do that in 2010 have fallen flat. So what else can we do? I mean, we attempted to do that by saying that the police service shall be an independent service that is serving the people. Those attempts have failed. So what else can we do?
We can do several things, and I'm not providing a prescription here, but we can do several things in my own understanding. Number one is that there are 4 pillars that we must address this issue from. Number 1 pillar is we must mind the professional management of our National Police Service. The professionalism of the National Police Service is critical. We must hold to account those who have been put in charge of the National Police Service so that our officers' welfare is taken care of. Our officers' capacity to provide quality service are taken care of. Whether it is their remuneration, whether it is the HR management practices internally, that has to be taken care of. Number 2, we must demand of the Inspector General and his commanders that the police at every police station, at every police unit must involve the people. Public participation is now a critical pillar. And we have seen success stories, which we can share in another forum, where OCSs or ward commanders have embraced community policing, and it's working beautifully. In a good number of those stations where community policing committees are active, we haven't seen any incident of violation. The police have worked very well with the people. The police have not been, compelled to use force. They have actually discussed these issues with the business community, with the border people, with the hotel people, and people have complied without any shootings or any batons. Number 3, citizens must continue with this new momentum of accountability. Citizen journalism, citizen vigilance is critical. So that because the national police vetting done by the National Police Service earlier totally failed, it is now upon us to read out those numbers.
So we do our own vetting now.
Yes, citizen vetting, because by highlighting these cases and providing evidence, we'll be able to remove those ones who are not, who are not ready to change, and therefore protect the champions. So accountability will cut both ways: weeding out through citizen vigilance those who are not complying, and therefore enhancing the confidence of those who are pro-change to be able to, because they need support from citizenry. And for me, number 4 is citizens to demand quality service.
Yeah.
We cannot look the other way. We cannot say, the police cell in my area is so bad because only criminals go there. There's no criminal who goes to a police cell. It is only suspects who go to a police cell with all their rights. So we must demand that the police cell is humane, can treat us humanely,
and treat us humanely.
Sorry?
And I'm agreeing, and treat us humanely as well.
Precisely. I mean, we should demand in our own police stations that when women go there and they have their own biological needs, they must be provided with those needs, so that they're not dehumanized, they're not humiliated, for example. Just to give one example.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of work to do, and definitely this is a conversation that needs to continue. For now, we have to say thank you very much, Peter Qiyamah. Thank you so much for speaking with us this morning as a director of the IMLU. We are very grateful for that, and we hope that we can keep the conversation going and start to tick off those boxes in terms of what needs to be done to have a service as opposed to a force.
You're most welcome.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day, Peter.